My jealous SIL wore white to my wedding, bashed my parenting for years, then tried to steal my daughter while I was visiting my dying mom. I've been married to my husband, Harry, for almost 3 years now. I've always had a soft spot for his family. His mom is incredibly sweet and nurturing, and his dad was so easy to talk to. From the moment Harry and I started dating, his father welcomed me and like I'd always been part of their circle. Now, back when we first got together, we did go through a rough patch and broke up for a few months over some misunderstanding. But when we found our way back to each other, it was actually his dad who seemed the happiest about it. He was genuinely thrilled that we'd worked things out. But not everyone in Harry's family was quite as warm. There's one person in particular who never really took to me, his older sister, Sarah. Things with her have been awkward from day one. I'd heard from other women about how dating a guy with a sister can come with its own weird power dynamics, but I never truly understood that until I got involved with Harry. At first, I brushed off Sarah's coldness. It didn't seem worth worrying about, especially since I felt like I got along so well with the rest of the family. But eventually, Harry opened up to me and explained why his sister acted the way she did. Turns out, when they were growing up, their mom was often very sick and spent a lot of time in and out of hospitals. Their dad was completely consumed with taking care of her, which meant Sarah, being the older sibling, felt like she had to step up and look after Harry. She'd make sure he did his homework, cooked meals for him, and basically took on the role of his second mom. She even told him that, constantly. She took it to another level, too. She didn't want him hanging out with girls, and he pretty much had to check in with her or get her permission if he wanted to go on a date. She'd call him nonstop just to check on him, and when he did get into relationships, she'd meddle and pick fights with his girlfriends. A lot of them ended up walking away because they couldn't deal with how intrusive she was. As their mom's health got better over time, Harry started pulling away and living more independently. He stopped asking for Sarah's approval and chose to spend time with his friends instead of always being with her. She didn't take that well. At one point, she even installed a tracking app on his phone without telling him, just so she could see where he was. There was this one party he went to with his buddies, and she actually showed up there, furious that he hadn't invited her. She caused a scene, yelled at him in front of everyone, and completely embarrassed him. That's how Harry found out about the tracker. He told their parents everything, and they finally scolded Sarah for crossing a line. When Harry shared all of this with me, I'll admit, I considered ending things right then and there. It was a lot to take in, way more drama than I'd ever signed up for. But I loved him, and I knew none of that was his fault. He was just as much a victim in all of it. So I decided to stay, but from that point on, I made sure to be extra cautious around Sarah. In Harry's family, they have this long-standing tradition of gathering for dinners every couple of weeks and spending holidays together without fail. We rotate who hosts, so everyone takes turns. These get-togethers are pretty much the only times I see Sarah, since she never reaches out to me otherwise, and honestly, I don't mind that. Whenever we do see each other at these dinners, I try to keep things polite. But Sarah has this habit of saying things that seem innocent on the surface but are actually low-key insults. For example, I usually offer to do the dishes after dinner while Harry and his dad clear the table. Occasionally, if she's feeling generous, Sarah will lend a hand. One night, I was standing at the sink, elbow deep in suds, when she strolled over and said, "Well, after how much you ate tonight, you might as well clean all the dishes to burn off those extra calories." Now, I don't mind cleaning up. But that comment hit me hard. It felt like she was taking a jab at my weight, even though I'm not overweight at all. It really struck a nerve, so I fired back and said something like, "Well, maybe you should help me too, looks like you've packed on a little holiday weight yourself." The moment I said it, she blew up. She started yelling at me, accusing me of being cruel and insensitive. Harry, his dad, and even his mom all rushed in to see what the commotion was about. Sarah immediately started twisting the story, saying I flat out called her fat. But I hadn't, I just matched her energy. I stood my ground and denied it. When nobody jumped to defend her, she stormed out, totally fuming. Later that night, she texted me demanding an apology, but I refused. I told her I didn't feel like I had anything to say sorry for. And ever since that night, her dislike for me has only grown stronger. She's gotten ruder and more passive-aggressive, especially when no one else is around. When she was planning her wedding to her boyfriend Neil, she announced during one of our family dinners that she wanted everyone to keep their Christmas open because that's when the wedding was happening, no exact date, just around Christmas. I stayed quiet because, honestly, I'd already decided I wasn't going to the wedding unless I happened to be free. Every year, my family and I try to go on a trip together around that time since we all live far apart and barely get to see each other. Later that evening, as we were all chatting about random stuff, Sarah suddenly turned to me and asked, loudly, if I still planned on visiting my family that year. It was out of the blue, especially since she usually doesn't even talk to me. I calmly told her yes, I plan to see my family at the end of the year. She immediately followed up with, "So, are you skipping my wedding then?" I explained that I had no problem attending, but I needed to know the specific date so I could coordinate with my family. But that wasn't enough for her. She got louder, accusing me of being selfish and saying that this was exactly why she never liked me. I apparently only think about myself and never consider others. I tried to explain again that I just needed a confirmed date before I could commit. But Sarah didn't let up. She kept going, accusing me of being ungrateful after everything her family had supposedly done for me. Her voice kept rising, and I could feel how tense the room was getting. People were clearly uncomfortable and trying not to get pulled into the mess. Eventually, my mother-in-law stepped in to calm things down. She gently reminded Sarah that I hadn't flat-out refused the invitation, and it wasn't fair to expect me to cancel plans I'd made ages ago with my family, especially when Harry's family gets together practically every month. Sarah was still clearly annoyed, but she finally dropped it, for the moment, anyway. Later that night, Harry and I had our own argument about it. He told me I was in the wrong and said I should cancel my trip with my family altogether just to be there for Sarah's wedding. I pushed back and reminded him that I'd never once pressured him to join any of my family's events, so it felt wrong for him to insist I show up at a wedding for someone who couldn't even stand me. But he didn't let it go. He argued that I was the reason Sarah disliked me so much and said I needed to fix things with her or it could end up damaging our own relationship. I felt stuck. I didn't want more tension between me and Harry, so even though it felt unfair, I caved. I ended up texting Sarah an apology more for the sake of peace than anything and told her I'd cancelled my trip so I could be there. It wasn't an easy decision, but I thought it might help ease some of the tension. But then came the kicker: her wedding never even happened that Christmas. After all that stress and back and forth, it turns out the big wedding fell through because of financial issues. Instead, she had a quick courthouse ceremony the following year, followed by a small backyard reception. I was furious. All that drama, all that sacrifice on my end, for what? I had cancelled my plans with my own family for absolutely nothing. So when the time came for her backyard reception, I flat out refused to go. Harry tried to convince me, but I'd had enough. I stood firm. That's when I also decided I was done attending the regular family dinners. I still showed up for major holidays, but the monthly get-togethers? Nope. I told Harry he could go without me if he wanted. He did at first, but then he started coming home saying how bored he was without me there. Slowly, he stopped going to most of them too. I don't think that had everything to do with me. After we moved in together, his priorities naturally shifted, like most people's do. But Sarah wasn't happy about it. She'd call Harry and demand to know why he wasn't showing up to dinner or family events anymore. He'd just tell her he was tired or had too much work on his plate. Then I started hearing from some of Harry's cousins that Sarah had been running her mouth, blaming me for the whole thing. According to her, I was the reason Harry was drifting from the family, as if I was deliberately keeping him away. That ticked me off. So I asked Harry to set the record straight with her. I didn't want to keep being the villain in some story she made up. To his credit, he agreed. At the next family gathering, he took it upon himself to have a direct conversation with her. I wasn't there for it, but I heard afterward that it got pretty heated. Sarah didn't hold back. She accused me of being emotionally abusive toward Harry and said she'd been noticing narcissistic patterns in my behavior for years. She painted me as manipulative and claimed I was isolating Harry from everyone who cared about him. Harry tried to defend me. He told her how I always encouraged him to be part of family events and that I'd never once tried to come between him and his relatives. But Sarah just waved it off. According to her, I was manipulating him so well that he couldn't even see it. She started insulting me outright, going after my character and suggesting Harry could do way better than me. Harry kept trying to reason with her, to calm things down, but it only seemed to make her angrier. She accused him of being blinded by love and said I was just using him for his money and looks. The whole confrontation really shook him up. When he got home, he told me he was completely done with his sister. For months, he blocked her and didn't respond to any guilt trips from his parents, Mill and Phil. But then things took a turn. We heard from other relatives that Sarah was pregnant. Mill and Phil called for a family intervention and begged Harry to patch things up with her before the baby came. He didn't really want to, but under all the pressure, he gave in. They met for lunch a few times after that and apparently hashed things out. From what I could tell, things between them were okay again, but she never once apologized to me for the awful things she'd said. When I brought it up with Harry, he just sighed and said I should let it go. He figured motherhood might help her mature. I hoped he was right, but honestly, the opposite happened. Once Sarah had her baby boy, she named him Van. Her clinginess went into overdrive. She started calling Harry constantly, asking him to babysit. She claimed that since both she and her husband had to work, the least Harry could do was help out as an uncle. Harry wasn't exactly confident about taking care of a newborn, so he'd usually check in with me before agreeing. Sometimes I'd go with him and help watch Van, but the requests just kept coming. It got to the point where she was calling every other day. If she had errands to run, appointments, or just needed some me time, Harry was her go-to babysitter. And the thing is, she didn't just expect him, she expected me, too. But I had a life, and I wasn't about to give up all my free time to care for someone else's kid. It was draining. Eventually, I started saying no when she asked. Whenever I declined, Harry would usually follow my lead and say no as well, which only frustrated Sarah even more. Now, just to be clear, I never told Harry he couldn't help with Van. In fact, I often encouraged him to go if he wanted to. I just didn't want him depending on me every time. But Harry always had an excuse. He'd say he didn't know how to handle babies on his own or that he was afraid of doing something wrong. I'm pretty sure Sarah blamed me for that, too. She started getting sneaky with her requests, guilt-tripping Harry by saying stuff like, "Van really wants this," or "It would mean so much to the family if you did that." Sometimes she'd even throw out a random date and ask if he had anything planned, without telling him what for, just to corner us into agreeing to help her. Anytime Harry told Sarah that we were free, she'd conveniently announce that she had plans with friends and would just drop Van off at our place, basically forcing us into babysitting duty without asking. When Harry and I were planning our wedding, not once did Sarah call or message me to offer congratulations. But during a family dinner where I was sitting right there, she boldly announced that we should pay for a nanny to take care of Van during the event. She said she wanted to enjoy the wedding, have some drinks, and relax without worrying about her son. Harry immediately shut that down. He told her flat out that it wasn't our responsibility to cover childcare for her child, and if she didn't want to bring Van, she could always ask someone from Neil's side of the family to help out. Sarah shot back that she didn't trust Neil's family enough to leave her son with him. Neil overheard that and jumped into the conversation, clearly fed up. He told her she was being ridiculous and reminded her that his parents would be more than happy to watch Van for just one evening. Another time, while I was chatting with my mother-in-law about my wedding dress, I showed her a few pictures. It really was my dream dress, elegant, beautiful, everything I ever wanted. But of course, Sarah couldn't help herself and chimed in with a snide comment about how it was a total waste of money. Then she started bragging about how smart she was for getting married at the courthouse. My mother-in-law, bless her heart, gently reminded Sarah that she hadn't exactly had a choice, money had been tight, which is why she went with a simple ceremony. That didn't sit well with Sarah. She got defensive and claimed she could have chosen a different venue if she'd wanted, but chose not to because she was being a good wife and didn't want to blow through Neil's money. Then she turned to me and implied that not every woman is capable of making sacrifices like she had. I kept my cool and told her, calmly, that Harry and I were both contributing equally to our wedding costs, so technically, I was being an even better wife by not depending on my husband for everything. That seemed to hit a nerve. Sarah sulked through the rest of the evening, scowling like a grumpy teenager. Later, when I went to Vegas for my bachelorette party with my friends, we had a blast. We posted a bunch of photos, just silly, fun stuff. Nothing wild or inappropriate. But somehow, Sarah twisted it all in her head and told Harry that I must have hooked up with someone while I was there. According to her, no decent woman would drink and party like that before getting married. The wild part? Her own brother had partied and gotten drunk with his friends during his bachelor party, but she had no complaints about that. At our rehearsal dinner, she brought it up again in front of everyone, loudly pointing out how interesting it was that I'd chosen such a wild way to celebrate before the wedding. She told me I could have kept it low-key instead of going to Vegas. I just smiled and told her I enjoyed my trip, and since I paid for it with my own money, I didn't see anything wrong with having a little pre-wedding fun. But then, on the actual morning of our wedding, things took a turn. As I was getting ready, my mother-in-law walked into the room with a concerned look on her face. She showed me a photo Sarah had just sent her of the dress she planned to wear, and it was off-white. Honestly, it looked close enough to a wedding dress to be mistaken for one. My blood boiled. My mother-in-law apologized and showed me text messages where she'd already asked Sarah not to wear anything like that. But Sarah had responded saying she was already on her way and couldn't change. Yeah, right. I knew she was doing it on purpose. I didn't want to confront Sarah on my wedding day, so I called Harry and told him to deal with it. Thankfully, he and his dad handled it right away. His father literally ran out to buy Sarah a different dress and made it clear that she wouldn't be allowed into the venue unless she changed. That moment of support meant the world to me, but I'll be honest, I never really forgave her for pulling a stunt like that. Later at the reception, Sarah came up to me and had the nerve to accuse me of being a controlling bride. She said I was just jealous and insecure, and that's why I made her change her dress. I'd had it. I looked her in the eye and told her I was done with her gaslighting and manipulation. I wasn't going to keep entertaining her petty drama. I told her point blank that I had no energy left to deal with her childish behavior. Harry jumped in to defend me and called her out right there. He told her how completely out of line she was, especially on our wedding day, and how inappropriate it would have been for her to show up wearing a dress that looked like it belonged to the bride. Sarah clearly didn't expect Harry to take my side so firmly. She immediately turned on the waterworks, but those tears didn't move anyone. Eventually, she left the reception early. Before heading out, Neil came over to me and sincerely apologized. He admitted he had also tried to talk Sarah out of wearing that dress, but she was dead set on it. That just confirmed what I already knew, she had done it on purpose to sabotage my day. Since then, my relationship with Sarah remained tense. We kept things civil, but there was always an undercurrent of resentment. It wasn't until my daughter, Mary, was born that we saw a small shift. Something about the arrival of a new baby seemed to soften Sarah. When she came to visit me in the hospital, she actually apologized. She seemed genuinely interested in Mary and showed a level of care I hadn't seen from her before. Harry and his parents were thrilled that she'd finally taken a step toward mending things. I honestly hoped she'd matured. I was exhausted from all the years of butting heads with her. As time went on, I made an effort to encourage a bond between our kids. I wanted Mary to grow up close with her cousin, so I'd often invite Sarah over or meet up so the kids could play together. During those visits, Sarah and I would sometimes talk about our lives, our husbands, parenting, normal stuff. It was during one of those conversations that she confided in me. She told me she'd been trying to have another baby for a while now, and she really hoped for a girl. She said she always dreamed of having a daughter so she could buy cute little dresses and take her shopping. And I get it, I really do. That longing for a specific bond, a daughter you can share special moments with, it's something I understand deep down. I always told Sarah that you can't choose your baby's gender, so there's no point in stressing over something you can't control. But over time, I started noticing little things that gave me pause. During family gatherings, Sarah would constantly smother my daughter with hugs and kisses. Now, my daughter's not really the cuddly type, she gets uncomfortable easily and sometimes even starts to cry. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured Sarah was just being affectionate, maybe a little overbearing. But now, looking back, I can't help but wonder if it was something more. Recently, my mom fell ill and had to be hospitalized. That left my dad alone to take care of her. So, Harry, his parents, and I decided to fly out and visit. While they planned to stay just 4 days, I arranged to be there for 2 full weeks to support my dad and help out however I could. Harry would be in town only briefly, but he offered to help for those 4 days, and during that time, he'd take care of our daughter. I wanted to bring our daughter along, but since we'd be at the hospital most of the day, I didn't think it was a good idea to expose her to all those germs. Plus, I knew she'd get restless. Harry suggested asking Sarah for help just for the 4 days he'd be there, and surprisingly, she jumped at the chance. Before we left, I made sure to give Sarah a detailed list of our daughter's allergies and important info. She assured me everything would be just fine. Then, as we landed and were waiting to grab our luggage, I got a call from an unknown number. Thinking it might be the hospital, I answered. But it wasn't them, it was Child Protective Services. My heart just dropped. The woman on the other end started questioning where we were and why we had left our daughter with someone else. I explained that my mom was in the hospital, and we had arranged for Harry's sister, our daughter's own aunt, to look after her while we were away. Then came the shocker. CPS told me that Sarah had filed a report accusing me of abandoning my child and that she was actually preparing to fight for custody in court. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was panicked, trying to explain the truth as calmly as I could. I even handed the phone over to Harry, hoping he could help clear things up. But it became obvious that one of us had to fly back home immediately to deal with this in person. There was no other way. Harry quickly booked the first flight he could find, and because of the short notice, it cost him double. He flew back while I stayed behind with Mill and Phil to be there for my mother. None of us could make sense of what was happening. We tried calling Sarah over and over, but she refused to answer. It wasn't until Harry called me after he got back that I finally let out the breath I was holding. He had Mary with him. She was safe. Nothing had happened to her. I just broke down and cried. I was already so torn up about my mom being sick, and now, my sister-in-law had tried to take my child away from me. Phil and Mill were just as confused and heartbroken. They asked Harry several times if he could explain what was going on. He kept saying he would tell us everything once I got back, but I couldn't sit in that house another week, waiting and wondering. So I decided I'd cut my visit short and fly back with my in-laws in 4 days. Right now, I'm drowning in anger and disbelief. I can't wrap my head around what Sarah was thinking. I swear, if I ever see her again, I don't know what I'll do. Harry keeps saying I'll understand once I'm home, but the fact that he seems so calm about it only adds to my frustration. Update 1. It's been 4 days since that last update. I'm finally heading home today. I don't want to go into medical details, but thankfully, my mom is slowly getting better, even though she's still in the hospital. Once I confirm that Mary's truly okay, I might consider flying back to spend more time with my parents. But that depends on how things unfold. Also, I've seen a few people questioning whether my husband can properly take care of our daughter. Please don't doubt him. While it's true that years ago Sarah used to dump her kid on him all the time, Harry has grown into a really wonderful father. He's attentive, gentle, and completely devoted to Mary. This situation wasn't his fault. Phil and Mill have been trying non-stop to get in touch with Sarah and Neil, but no one is answering. I don't know what to make of that, but I just wanted to put it out there. Update 2. I know it's been a week, and my inbox has been flooded with messages. You all are amazing, but please, take a breath. Things aren't as terrifying as some of you are imagining. First of all, my daughter and husband are safe. Mary is her cheerful, bubbly self. But we did finally get some answers, and I'm still trying to process it all. After I got home, we sat down and had a serious talk. Harry told us what had really happened. Turns out, the reason Sarah wasn't answering any calls is because she had been admitted to a psychiatric facility. We were stunned. Mill's face went pale as Harry explained. Apparently, Sarah had become completely obsessed with the idea of having a daughter. I knew she'd always wanted one, but I didn't realize how deep that desire ran. On the day we left Mary in her care, Sarah saw it as her chance to finally have the daughter she'd been longing for. She wasn't just babysitting, she genuinely believed she could fight for custody and raise Mary as her own. She told Neil about her plan, but he didn't take her seriously at first. He thought she was joking, because, let's be honest, no one in their right mind would do something like that. But she went through with it. She filed the complaint, and Harry had to rush home to deal with the mess. After CPS investigated, they issued Sarah a firm warning about filing false reports. Harry was furious. He confronted her, trying to make sense of what she'd done. And that's when everything came spilling out. Sarah actually told him that she'd been watching me and Mary closely and believed I was a bad mother because, in her opinion, I didn't hug or kiss my daughter enough. She claimed Mary didn't like being held by me, and when she would cry in Sarah's arms, she assumed it was because I was abusing her. Harry lost it. He told her she was way out of line and clearly not thinking straight. She kept insisting she deserved to raise Mary because she would be better for her. That's when things finally clicked for Harry. He realized this wasn't just jealousy or resentment. This was something deeper, something broken. Eventually, after hours of talking, Sarah admitted she wasn't okay. She said she'd fantasized about taking Mary and raising her as her own daughter. Even Neil, who had always stood by her, was shaken. He packed her a bag and drove her to a psychiatric hospital himself. That's where she's been these past several days. Neil later reached out to my in-laws to apologize for not picking up the phone and promised to explain everything in person soon. Since then, we've been taking care of Van. With Neil working long hours, we didn't want the little guy to feel alone. He's been staying with us, and we're doing our best to give him love and stability. Now that I know the full story, I understand why Sarah did what she did. I also understand why Harry didn't want to tell me everything right away. It's just, a lot. Update 3. Well, my post went viral. And I've heard from a lot of you, thank you for the support and advice. I finally had a long conversation with Harry, and we agreed to take out a restraining order against Sarah. Even if she's getting treatment now, I can't risk something like this happening again. I'm honestly scared to leave my child behind when I go visit my parents next week. But Harry, Mill, and Phil have all promised that they'll do whatever it takes to keep Mary safe. I also can't help but feel guilty for cutting my visit short, especially knowing how sick my mom still is. I want to go back and spend real time with my parents, especially my dad, who's carrying so much of this on his shoulders. Hopefully, once things settle down, I can return and be there for them the way they've always been there for me.